Over the last year, many here in the U.S. and in Washington state have been impacted by homelessness due to the COVID-19 virus and the resulting lockdown. There have been endless videos to show this around the country. Here in the state of Washington, Governor Inslee stated that he wasn't going to let that happen here. He put in place an eviction moratorium in effect on March 21st, 2020.
And to that end, I'm announcing today several measures to help relief for our workers, for our renters, and for our small business people. First, I'm announcing a statewide moratorium on evictions for failure to pay rent for residential tenants for the next 30 days.
So with the simple stroke of a pen, all evictions in Washington state came to an end. At its basic level, the eviction moratorium was designed to minimize the homelessness pandemic effect in our state that was caused by the forced government closure of businesses and the economy due to COVID-19. We saw this locally with the homeless encampment of Bellingham City Hall that became known as Camp 210. This major community action caused us as a community to think more about our local housing and all the stakeholders and how to provide more affordable places to live. So what happens in the middle of an eviction moratorium? What if someone decides that they are going to stay in their house but do not continue to pay rent? What if they do this even if their job wasn't affected by the COVID-19 lockdown? Chris found himself and his family facing an unusual issue for a small landlord when he got a message from the tenant renting his place.
I remember him saying to me, you're lucky you have good tenants like us, because with this moratorium, we don't have to pay rent. And I remember thinking, well, you do. You're both working. At this point in time, my wife had lost her job as a paralegal because the courts were shut down. By June, they had actually decided they were going to move out, and they gave us notice at the end of May, and they said, we're going to move out. We agreed, and it was then, in the middle of June, they decided we're not moving out. So our June rent was their last month. In July, they send us a letter that says, due to COVID, we are unable to pay rent at this time. Would you like to work out a payment plan? And I said, oh, absolutely. I'd love to work out a payment plan. And they never responded.
Did either of them lose their jobs?
In August, but not due to COVID. The contract with the company he worked for was up out at BP. So he lost his job because the contract ended.
Under the July 24th, 2020 order, evictions were allowed only when the direct owner intends to occupy the unit as their primary residence, or when the owner is selling the unit. Final details of these provisions under the extension may change. However, neither of these scenarios address what happened to Chris. He was told to contact an attorney in such a situation prior to issuing the notice of termination of tenancy.
We at this point started to look at the option of having to sell this home that we bought. We didn't want to, but we didn't have any choice or recourse.
And in Chris's case, the demands from his tenant were going from bad to worse.
But even if we put it up for sale, we didn't know the condition of the house. At this point, any communication with him led to threats of police contact. He's already falsely accused me of killing his ducks in the backyard. And it became this really toxic, just draining feeling. And we're not
no longer paying rent?
No longer paying rent.
Okay.
No payments, nothing. And we're stuck. And so we're talking to an attorney, and he says, well, there's nothing you can do. Just wait for the moratorium to come up.
Chris and his wife weren't multi-million-dollar landlords with properties scattered all across the county. They were just trying to rent out their one place.
As this moratorium was taking place, not only did they take over the contracts, they did it in such a manner that no matter what, the landlord becomes the second-class citizen. And they did it without regard for, if I had 100 properties and I had 2 people not paying rent, that's a lot different than having one little house and having somebody refuse to pay rent. Because that's what our situation was. It was just a refusal to pay rent. And I believe that more people out there are trying to get by and trying to do the right thing than these stories like mine. But when they wrote these, they put no guardrails in place. There was no safety net. There was no get a letter from your employer that states your hours are being cut, give it to your landlord, and then I can file with the state, and maybe the state would cushion it.
These are some of the unintentional issues that the eviction moratorium has caused, and we might just be at the beginning of this new crisis.
are we going to be foreclosed on? Are we going to lose all of the money that we've invested because this person has destroyed the home? And not only that, even if we did put the house on the market and we try and sell, that person can still say, I'm not moving.
Right.
Now we've got to try and show a house to somebody who's not moving. We have to try and sell a house with tenants who are refusing to leave. I mean, I would have a hard time investing in a property where going, am I going to be able to get these people to leave? The other aspect to this that I feel is really not being hit on is if you haven't been paying your rent for a few months, you still owe that money. At some point, this moratorium is going to end. So are they going to continue this forever?
Right.
Or are we just going to have a flood of evictions? There is no talk about helping the people who really need help to change this. Why can't landlords and tenants go to the state and say, hey, here's what needs to happen in order? But they don't care about that. The state just simply said, hey, easiest way to solve this problem, you can't do anything with your tenants.